of October has meant that the nights are getting darker, and I've really been focusing on finishing up some of the pieces I started in the summer in time to prepare for making all of my little Christmas bits and gifts. Some of the projects that I want to share with you today are ones that you've probably had a glimpse of in some of my previous videos or over on my Instagram. Although some people find it hard to find joy when the evenings get so dark, I always view this time of year with so much optimism in the run-up to Christmas and celebrating Halloween. Some of the pieces that I'm sharing with you today took me a little bit longer than I would have liked, just because I started a few of them back in the summer, and I have been really, for whatever reason, very into knitting on tiny needles. However, I do feel like all the hard work has really been worth it now that these projects are finally coming together, and I'm ready to share with you 2 finished pieces and 2 works in progress. To kick off my roundup of my October makes, I wanted to share my Whitmoor cardigan with you, which I just finished the other day, but I already know will become an absolute prized addition to my wardrobe. As mentioned in my previous videos, I've made my Whitmoor cardigan in this beautiful combination from Knitting for Olive in the shade Dusty Dove Blue. In keeping with my plans for my autumn palette, I thought that this would be a lovely feminine colour to really complement the intricate lace work that runs throughout the yoke of this piece. Although I really enjoyed making this piece, I have to admit it's probably one of the most complex items that I've ever tried to create. At some points in the pattern, I was knitting backwards and forwards following the lace chart, and then also using extra tiny needles on both sides to create the button band. Now, that might not sound complicated, but when you have one project that has 3 sets of needles on the go at once in several different sizes, it can start to feel a little bit hectic to work. However, once I got over the body section and I finished that long bit of stockinette and all of the fiddly button band work, it was really quite smooth sailing from there on. Despite the fact that this cardigan was quite a lot of hard work, I would really highly recommend this piece for anybody looking for a more challenging lacework pattern that just feels very modern, very feminine, and extremely beautiful. I really love the way that this piece fits me. I feel like I chose just the right size because I get quite a good fit through the body, and because the needles for the ribbed band at the bottom are quite significantly smaller, you do get it kind of bunching in and you get that blousing effect that you often miss in a lot of hand knits. Although I've never encountered a pattern that has required me to use as many sets of needles at once, I do think that this one is worth taking the plunge for. The quality of the thick button band is just superb. It's really solid, and it feels like it won't just stretch out as soon as I wear the cardigan a few times. I also enjoy the fact that the Whitmoor cardigan includes loads of ways that you can customise it and get that perfect fit and shape. I myself fancied going for a more tapered sleeve because I didn't want as much bunching if I was going to wear the cardigan under my jackets and blazers and coats. So I went for what is actually quite a snug fit on the tapered sleeve. I will say that if you are someone who has a slightly larger arm measurement, do watch out for this in the pattern because I have really quite small wrists, but the cuff with the rib is really tight. And I had a moment where I was looking at it and I was wondering, is this actually going to fit me? And I completely followed the pattern instructions. I didn't decrease it any more than I had to, but it is very small. Despite the fact that it is on the small side, I am happy, as I mentioned before, with the overall fit. I like how the sleeves stop just at the point that I like them, so at my wrist. I also enjoy how the cardigan looks when I tuck it in, and I don't actually really need to ensure that I tuck it in that much because the tighter band at the bottom does do that kind of oversized soft tuck for me. Now, I've heard many other people say this, but I had to try the yarn for myself to be a true believer. And now that I've had a go and I've made my cardigan in this combo from Knitting for Olive, it is so worth the hype. The Merino is extremely soft, but the Mohair is out of this world. I haven't actually used a Mohair that has felt so soft and itch-free against my skin before. I've worn the cardigan out, just popping to the shop the other day, and I'm happy to report that even without a proper sort of camisole underneath, there was no itching at all. So the quality that they get in their mohair fibres is something completely impeccable. I also enjoy that they have such a wide range of colours. Now, because I love this mohair so much, when I tried on the cardigan and I was doing all of the finishing, I did decide to purchase a little bit more to go with some navy yarn that I'm going to use to make my terrazzo sweater by Petite Knit. Having already completed most of the body section and the lace yoke in the summer, the main thing that I had to do to finish off my Whitmore cardigan was knit the sleeves. Now, knitting sleeves is not something that I necessarily have a problem with, but I've just kind of found it hard to find the motivation to do it at the moment. I'm also on my sleeves of my other jumper that I'm making that I'll show you a bit later, and I don't know what it is. I kind of feel like I get to a point where I've done the interesting body section and then I'm just really impatient for it to be finished. And knitting sleeves is nice and easy, but when you're using really tiny needles, it can feel like a little bit of a slog. The other thing that I had to do to finish off my Whitmore cardigan was select the right buttons. Now, as some of you might have seen in my autumn colour palette video, I am drawing a lot of inspiration for this jumper and this colour from the designs of Cézanne. And following this line of inspiration, I decided to try and search for the perfect little pearl buttons. Ideally, I wanted something a little bit flatter than the ones that I managed to find at my local haberdashery, but I am still really happy with the way that this looks, and I think that it just adds an extra layer of femininity to what is already a very romantic cardigan. I'm ecstatic to have finally finished this. It's so rewarding when you finish something that's been on your needles for ages, and I just know that I'm going to get loads of wear out of it. It's completely my style, and I feel there's something very elegant and very pretty about it. I would personally wear this with high-waisted trousers, probably tucked in, because that's kind of my preferred way to wear a lot of my sweaters. But I think that it would also look nice with things layered underneath it, or just alone and kind of loose and open at the top. So there are lots of possibilities and different ways that you could wear this cardigan. It also works for a real wide range of occasions. Because it's so lacy and delicate, it could be dressed up or worn casually with a pair of jeans. Now, my second finished object is much smaller than my Whitmore cardigan, but also something that I'm very excited and happy to share with you, and that is my Teddy Clutch by Petite Knit. The yarn that I received to make this bag was kindly sent to me by We Are Knitters, and I've never tried any of their yarn before, but I have to say I'm really impressed with the quality of all of the different types of yarn that they sent me. This Teddy Clutch is knit up in one of their new yarns, which is called the Cloud Boucle yarn, and it's just heavenly. I've wanted to make something out of boucle yarn for quite a while, but I had heard that it's a little bit challenging to knit with because all of the individual curly bits sort of get a little bit tangled when you plunge your needle in, and unfortunately that is true. Now, I was making a smaller piece, so I didn't let it frustrate me too much, but I can imagine if you were knitting a larger jumper, it would be something that you would have to bear in mind before you started, because you're not going to have that smooth and effortless experience of plunging your needle in, maybe watching something on the TV. Absolutely not with boucle yarn. You have to focus and you have to make sure that you are actually getting your needle in the right place and not instead hooking one of the little curly bits. But challenges with boucle aside, this pattern is so sweet and so perfect for the winter. I love how light and fluffy this yarn is. I kind of expected it to not make such a thick and warm looking fabric, but the final piece is really solid and feels very, very nice for a bag. Now, white may not be the most practical choice, but I just thought that it would look so lovely with my camel coat, and I like how it's almost like a little sheep that I can keep by my side. Now, I did make one change to this piece because it was originally a clutch, but I prefer a strap. I decided to add this gold chain with little hooks inside. I can easily just unclip it whenever I want to use it as a clutch, but I imagine because it's white, I'll probably save myself the trauma of really messing it up by touching it too much with my hands. To complement this really beautiful off-white yarn, I went for a cream lining that I found in a local yarn shop in Lecco by Lake Como. And this fabric is so beautiful. I might have to go back and get some to make myself a summer top when it gets a little bit warmer. And when I ordered my clutch frame, which you'll see here, it did also come with a pretty little label from Petite Knit that I included inside my clutch. The other change that I made to this piece is instead of just doing a normal lining, I made a special custom lining for my bag. So to design my custom pocket, I actually got my card holder and I measured the pocket based around the dimensions of that, just to ensure that it would be a perfect snug fit and it wouldn't gape too much when I opened it up and just needed to pull it out. And that worked really well. I also feel that that will make the bag just that little bit more practical. So yeah, here's my finished teddy clutch. It's very cute and very fun. I enjoyed making it and it was a good palette cleanser in between these quite complicated sweater projects that I've been working on. A real joy to knit, but definitely a project for people who would be comfortable with doing a bit of sewing, because you do have to cut and sew the lining yourself and then you have to put it in, which is quite fiddly and probably the most difficult part of the whole project. But luckily with my new sewing machine, the actual making of the lining was a breeze and just a really rewarding and lovely project. I would wear my teddy clutch primarily when I know that I don't need to lug a lot of stuff around with me and I just want to take a cute little bag that gives a pop of something fuzzy to one of my winter outfits. Now that I've shown you my finished objects, I want to introduce you to some of my works in progress. And these are 2 sweater projects that I'm really hoping to finish in the next few weeks before I start working on my Christmas stuff in earnest. The first project is one that you will have seen in my last video very briefly, and that is the Kimberly sweater by Mauricette C. I hope I'm saying that right. I will link her down below. She's an extremely talented French designer who has patterns that I really admire, that I think really capture a femininity and an elegance that I look for when I'm selecting my patterns. The Kimberly is knit on absolutely teensy tiny 3mm needles, and that is what gives it its beautiful finish and really polished and clean look, but it does also make the knitting progress slow to say the least. I've been working on this now for probably about 2 months, and I've done all of the body, so the only things that I have left are the sleeves and the double folded collar, which I think will just be the perfect way to finish this very pretty piece. I followed her sizing instructions in regards to ease, but I do think that the sweater is looking slightly bigger than I anticipated. Now that's not necessarily a problem because I had envisioned probably folding this and tucking it, or maybe wearing it with a shirt underneath for a little bit of extra warmth. The real star of the Kimberly is this very pretty and quite simple to knit cable and lace design that runs all the way through the body and all the way down the back. I feel like this design has a timelessness and a simplicity to it, but also quite a bit of interest because the cabling section does create a very unique texture that runs all the way through, and it looks very smart because it's knit on these small needles. Genuinely, I think that if you selected the perfect yarn, you wouldn't be able to tell that this wasn't machine made. Now, talking about yarn, the yarn that I'm using for this is this lovely pairing from Hobbii. So this is their friends Kid Silk and their friends Merino. I enjoy this pairing because I find their Merino to be very bouncy and squishy, and I think it's also superwash, so that could be good for people who are looking for something that they can wash more easily in their washing machine. I've really got my fingers crossed that I'll be able to finish this very soon because I'm looking forward to wearing it, and I don't really have anything that's kind of cream or off-white in my wardrobe at the moment that is knitted. I only really have shirts, So it will be nice to add a new colour and something a little bit different that I think will look really timeless and elegant and go very well with a lot of the things I already have. Now moving on to my final work in progress, and there's not much of it to look at the moment, but I have created a swatch for you to get an idea of the colours that I'm going for and the sort of texture that I'll be getting once this has been made. And this is the May, and on Ravelry I believe it's called the Model May by Hanne Rimmen. Now Hanne Rimmen is probably one of my favourite colourwork designers. I think that she's just so extremely talented, and I'm kind of addicted to her colourwork designs. I have made one of her pieces before that you will have seen briefly when I was knitting my Whitmoor cardigan, and that is the Holly sweater, which so many people loved. But for this one, I wanted to go for a slightly thicker and more heavy-duty yarn. My Holly sweater was knit up in Drops Air, but this one I'm making in my stash yarn that I had left over from last year of Drops Lima and Drops Alpaca silk in beige, and I believe that the alpaca silk is in brown. This combination creates just the most gorgeous, luscious fabric. The Lima gives you so much structure, but because of the alpaca content in this yarn, you do get a lot of softness, so it will still feel very comfortable against my skin. I knit up another one of my favourite jumpers in this combination, and that is the Moby sweater by Petite Knit. And I just really like the way that these two yarns gel together. I think it's to do with the alpaca, and I'm going to be investigating alpaca yarns a bit more in the future, and potentially doing a video all about alternatives to mohair or comparing different types of mohair. So this May sweater is going to feature a lovely, almost lattice-like colourwork design around the yoke. I am very into my neutral kind of Scandi yoke sweaters. I just find them to be visually very impactful, just like this one. And I don't know, they make me happy when I'm making them. I love to see the colourwork being revealed as I knit, and although I haven't got to this colourwork section yet, I'll give you a quick sneak peek of the colour combination that I'm going to be using for the yoke of my sweater. So this is Drops Lima in beige and navy, and the beige is held with a brown alpaca silk, but the navy is held with their kid silk, because their alpaca silk kind of navy colour wasn't quite deep enough for my liking, and I wanted to make sure that my colourwork would really stand out with all of that fuzz and coziness. I'm really excited by how this swatch looks, and it's a challenge to swatch colourwork because of the fact that you have to hold the yarn in a little bit of a strange way and wrap it around your hand, but it was worth it for me to see how these two colours would gel together. I had seen a few other people select very similar colours, but maybe with a slightly lighter sort of brown camel colour, and I really like this combination. I think that it will look great with so many things. Now that I've shown you some of the projects I've recently finished and some of the new things that I'm working on, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. This is one of the best times to knit and get cozy and feel all warm and create things that you can wear straight away. It's one of my favourite times of year, and I'm hoping that in the next few weeks I'll be able to share some of my more Christmassy things too, just like this Christmas jumper from last year, because it's always my favourite time when I get to make Christmassy, sweet colourwork things for my friends and family. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!